Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever found yourself thinking about someone constantly without a single message, call, or word exchange between you? Days pass, maybe even months or years, and still their image lingers in your mind. Their voice echoes in your thoughts, and no matter how much time goes by, they remain a presence in your heart. Constant thoughts about someone suggest a deep emotional connection. When a person occupies your mind repeatedly, even without any current interaction or communication, it's rarely a coincidence. Our minds are wired to filter out the trivial and focus on what emotionally resonates with us. If someone continues to appear in your thoughts, it often reflects the intensity of the bond you once shared or still feel on some level. This kind of connection can stem from different places. It could be rooted in love, admiration, gratitude, or even regret. Sometimes it's not even about the person themselves anymore, but about the feelings and memories they represent. They become a symbol of a time when something within you was awakened. Whether the relationship was brief or long-lasting, if the experience held emotional weight, your subconscious mind holds onto it like an imprint. It doesn't let go easily because it's part of what shaped your inner world. There are people we meet who touch us in ways we can't always explain. They might have introduced us to a part of ourselves we hadn't yet discovered. They might have given us hope, helped us feel understood, or challenged us in a way that sparked growth. Even when the relationship ends or never begins in the way we hope, the emotional connection lingers because it was real to us. And real emotions don't simply vanish because conversations stop. Silence isn't a sign that feelings are gone. Sometimes it's the very absence of words that makes their presence in your mind louder. It's also possible that thinking about someone constantly is your mind's way of processing unfinished business. When something is left unsaid or unexplored, our brains tend to replay those scenarios, searching for answers, clarity, or closure. Emotional connections don't follow a schedule. A person you haven't spoken to in years can still hold a place in your heart simply because something about that relationship remains unresolved. Whether it was a love that never had a chance, a friendship that ended without explanation, or a person who left during a vulnerable time in your life, the emotional weight lingers. But not all emotional connections are based on longing or loss. Sometimes the thoughts arise from pure admiration or appreciation. You might find yourself remembering how that person made you feel seen, how they brought out the best in you, or how their energy inspired you. Even without any contact, the emotional trace they left behind becomes part of how you navigate life today. That too is a connection, one rooted in memory, inspiration, or gratitude. Thinking about someone consistently doesn't always mean you want them back in your life. It might just mean that they represent something meaningful to you, something your soul isn't ready to forget. It's a sign of how deeply you experience the world, how sincerely you connect, and how fully you let people in. When someone continues to show up in your inner world, it's not just about them, it's about you. It reveals the depths of your emotional landscape and your ability to hold space for people, experiences, and feelings that matter. Ultimately, these constant thoughts aren't random. They're indicators of an emotional bond that was real, important, or transformative in some way. Whether that connection is a blessing, a lesson, or a reminder of something unfinished, it tells you something about the value that person once held and perhaps still does. Lack of communication doesn't always equal closure. In fact, silence often creates more questions than answers. When someone disappears from your life without explanation, the absence of dialogue can leave a void filled with confusion, speculation, and emotional residue. We like to think that time and distance can heal all wounds, but the truth is, without understanding or acknowledgement, the heart often clings to what's unresolved. Communication is a bridge not just between people, but between emotion and understanding. When that bridge is broken or never built, we're left staring at the gap, wondering what went wrong or what could have been. A relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or familial, often needs a sense of completion to truly be released. Words carry weight. They offer clarity, closure, and in many cases healing. Without them, the mind loops through memories, searching for meaning, reinterpreting past conversations, replaying every detail, trying to find the moment when things began to unravel. In some cases, the lack of communication is a choice. Someone walks away, chooses not to respond, or disappears without warning. And while that action might be clear on the surface, a definitive ending by withdrawal, it doesn't erase the feelings left behind. Silence doesn't explain why someone left. It doesn't answer the what ifs or the why nots. It doesn't untangle the emotional threads that were once tightly woven between two people. Without the chance to speak or be heard, many are left carrying unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and a quiet ache that doesn't know where to go. Closure isn't something we always get from others. Ideally, we seek it through mutual understanding, a conversation that allows both people to express how they feel, to share their truths, and to respectfully part ways if needed. But when communication is cut off, that process is interrupted. We're left with pieces of a story that feels incomplete. It's like trying to close a book without reading the last chapter. The narrative stays open, looping in our minds, especially when the connection was meaningful. Even when time moves on and lives evolve, the absence of closure can follow us like a shadow. You may find yourself thinking about the person not because you want them back, but because you never fully understood why things ended. The emotional energy that would have gone into healing and acceptance is often redirected into analysis and memory. And while people say you should move on, it's hard to do that without knowing what exactly you're moving on from. There's also the emotional toll of what's left unsaid. Apologies that were never given, gratitude that was never expressed, feelings that were never validated. When communication ends abruptly, these emotions don't disappear, they become internalized. We carry them in silence, sometimes blaming ourselves, sometimes resenting the other person, and often feeling trapped in a story that never had a proper ending. This is why silence can be so powerful, not just as an absence of sound, but as an emotional weight. It becomes a space where pain can echo and where assumptions take the place of facts. You might try to fill in the blanks with your own interpretations, but without real communication, you can never be certain. And uncertainty rarely brings peace. Lack of communication doesn't always mean both people have found closure. Sometimes it means one person chose distance while the other was left searching for understanding. And until that understanding is found, whether through a conversation or inner healing, the connection lingers, not always visibly, but deeply, quietly, and persistently within. It may reflect unfinished emotions. When someone lingers in your thoughts without warning or invitation, it's often not just about who they are, but about what was left incomplete. Emotions, unlike tasks, don't disappear simply because time has passed or because circumstances have changed. They stay tucked beneath the surface, waiting for recognition, resolution, or expression. Unfinished emotions are powerful because they represent moments that were not fully lived or feelings that were never fully processed. In many cases, these emotions arise from relationships that ended without closure. Maybe there was never a final conversation, or maybe words were exchanged, but they didn't capture the truth of truth. Perhaps love was one-sided, or mutual feelings were denied by bad timing, fear, or pride. When a connection ends prematurely or abruptly, the emotional energy tied to that experience doesn't vanish, it gets stored. You may find yourself revisiting that person in your thoughts because something about the way it ended still stirs within you. Unfinished emotions can take many forms: regret, longing, confusion, even anger. Sometimes you miss the person, other times you miss who you were when you were with them. You might feel guilt over what you said or what you didn't. You might wish you'd fought harder to keep the relationship or walked away sooner. These feelings don't always present themselves clearly. Instead, they show up subtly through dreams, passing thoughts, or sudden emotional waves when something reminds you of them. There's also a part of us that seeks understanding. When something ends without full emotional closure, our minds naturally want to revisit it, not to obsess, but to make sense of it. We ask ourselves why it happened the way it did. We wonder what the other person felt, what they thought, and whether they too carry unfinished emotions. It's a form of emotional searching, a desire to rewrite the past, or at least find peace with it. The challenge with unfinished emotions is that they can color your present. You may meet new people, start new chapters, and tell yourself you've moved on, but if those old feelings remain unacknowledged, they influence how you connect with others. You might hold back in relationships, afraid of repeating the past, or you might chase after something familiar, mistaking emotional familiarity for love. Until those emotions are addressed, they often lead to patterns, silent guides that shape your choices without your full awareness. Unfinished emotions aren't weaknesses, they're signs of depth. They reveal how much you felt, how open your heart was, and how sincerely you invested yourself. But they also ask for attention. They ask you to listen to the part of yourself that still needs understanding, comfort, or expression. Sometimes the healing comes from revisiting the memories and allowing yourself to feel what you avoided at the time. Other times it comes from writing the words you never said or speaking them into the silence, just so they no longer live only inside you. You might never get the conversation you want. The person may never return, and the circumstances may never change. But the emotions that were left unfinished don't have to remain that way forever. Acknowledging them, giving them space to breathe, and accepting their presence can be enough to begin healing. In doing so, you free yourself not from the memory of that person, but from the emotional hold they have on you. When someone remains in your mind for no clear reason, it may be because your heart still has something to say. It's not always about rekindling what was lost. Sometimes it's simply about honoring what was felt so that you can finally let it rest. Presence in your mind doesn't mean they belong in your present life. The mind has a way of holding on to people long after they've physically left our world. Just because someone appears in your thoughts regularly, or you still feel a connection to them, doesn't necessarily mean they should be a part of your life today. Memory is not always a signal to act. Sometimes it's simply a reflection of something that once mattered deeply, a reminder of an experience that shaped you, not a call to revisit it. There are people who leave a lasting imprint on our hearts. They may have entered your life during a pivotal time when you were vulnerable, evolving, or in need of something emotionally significant. They may have helped you grow, made you feel seen, or sparked emotions that you hadn't felt before. When connections are deep, even if they don't last, their emotional residue lingers. You may remember how they laughed, how they looked at you, or how their presence made you feel less alone. These memories, though rooted in the past, can be incredibly vivid, causing us to feel like the bond is still alive in the present. But emotional presence is not the same as real, practical belonging. The person in your mind may not fit into your current life anymore. They might have changed, or you might have. The relationship may have had unresolved issues or unhealthy patterns. What existed in one phase of life might no longer be compatible with who you are now. Growth often creates distance, not because the past was meaningless, but because you've outgrown what it once meant to you. The nostalgia attached to someone can be powerful and misleading. We tend to remember the highlights, the warmth, the tenderness, especially when we're lonely or missing something in our current life. But romanticizing the past can cloud judgment. It's easy to confuse emotional memory with a sign that you should reconnect, but feelings are not always instructions. Sometimes they're just echoes, proof that you felt deeply, not that the connection still serves you today. It's important to differentiate between someone who truly belongs in your life and someone who merely represents a significant chapter of it. Just because someone shaped your past doesn't mean they're meant to shape your future. Holding space for what they meant to you is valid, but that doesn't require reintroducing them into your life. It's possible to honor a connection without resurrecting it. The mind may revisit those moments as a way of making peace, not as a cue to reopen doors that were closed for good reasons. Re-engaging with someone just because they're on your mind can sometimes reopen old wounds. If the relationship ended in pain, betrayal, or toxicity, remembering them doesn't justify allowing them back in. Your emotional memory may not recognize the red flags, but your growth should. You've come a long way, and not everyone deserves access to the new version of you. At times, the presence of someone in your mind is just a lesson wrapped in emotion. They came into your life to teach you something about love, about loss, about boundaries, or about yourself. Once that lesson is learned, the emotional attachment may persist, but the need for their presence no longer exists. Learning to let someone go mentally, even when their memory still stirs your heart, is a quiet but powerful act of self-respect. Ultimately, thoughts are not always instructions. The presence of a person in your mind is a part of your emotional journey, not necessarily your destination. What you had with them may always matter, but that doesn't mean they still belong where you're going. The ability to feel deeply is not weakness, but emotional strength. In a world that often encourages emotional restraint, detachment, or stoicism, those who allow themselves to truly feel are sometimes misunderstood. Sensitivity is frequently mistaken for fragility, and vulnerability is too often labeled as a flaw. But in reality, to feel deeply, to love, to grieve, to hope, to care is one of the greatest forms of human strength. It requires courage to open your heart, to sit with complex emotions, and to move through the pain instead of avoiding it. Feeling deeply means you are fully alive. It means you are tuned in to the richness of the human experience, aware of both its beauty and its hardship. People who feel deeply do not shy away from emotional truths. They allow themselves to be moved by life, by art, by relationships, by injustice, by love. This emotional openness allows for deeper connections with others because it fosters empathy and understanding. When you are in touch with your own emotions, you are more capable of recognizing and respecting the feelings of those around you. True emotional strength is not about suppressing tears or building walls around your heart. It is about standing tall even while your heart is aching. It's about showing up for others even when your own spirit is bruised. It's about choosing to love again even after being hurt. That is not weakness. That is resilience. It takes far more bravery to stay emotionally present in a world that often encourages numbness than it does to disconnect. People who feel deeply often carry the weight of the world in ways others may never see. They feel the tension in a room. They sense the sadness behind someone's smile. They notice the small details that others overlook, the silent cry for help, the fatigue in someone's eyes, the love that remains unspoken. This level of emotional awareness may be heavy at times, but it is also a gift. It allows for a greater understanding of others and a more profound relationship with life itself. Unfortunately, we live in a culture that often equates emotional depth with drama or instability. From a young age, many are taught to hide their feelings, to toughen up, to get over it quickly. As a result, people who express emotion openly are sometimes judged, as though emotional expression is something to be ashamed of. But hiding what you feel doesn't make you stronger. It often makes you disconnected. It is through the process of feeling and expressing that healing happens, that bonds are formed, and that meaning is created. Emotional strength lies in the ability to feel without being consumed. It's about knowing your emotions without letting them control you. A strong person doesn't deny sadness. They embrace it and allow it to move through them. They don't ignore fear, but rather face it with honesty. They don't run from love. Even when it's risky, they lean into it, knowing that the reward of connection is worth the possibility of pain. To feel deeply is to be human in the fullest sense. It means your heart is open, not closed. It means your experiences have shaped you, not hardened you. People who feel deeply may cry more often, but they also laugh harder. They may grieve longer, but they also love more fiercely. They carry their emotions not as a burden, but as a badge of authenticity, of truth, of life truly lived. Feeling deeply is not a flaw to fix, but a strength to embrace. It is a powerful reminder that within softness there is incredible strength, and within vulnerability there is profound courage. You must choose whether to revisit the connection or grow from it and move forward. Life is full of relationships that leave a lasting mark, some beautiful, some painful, some both. When a person continues to occupy your thoughts long after the communication has ended, It's natural to question whether that connection deserves another chance or whether it's time to accept the experience for what it was and take its lessons into your future. That choice, though deeply personal, often defines how we move through healing and how we shape our emotional path forward. Revisiting a connection can sometimes be the right decision. There are cases where timing was off, misunderstandings got in the way, or growth was needed on both sides before the relationship could function in a healthy, meaningful way. If both individuals have evolved and are willing to communicate with honesty and openness, revisiting the bond can lead to a deeper, more mature relationship. Sometimes love doesn't fade, it simply waits for the right conditions to bloom fully. In these moments, going back doesn't mean stepping backward. It can mean choosing each other again, this time with clarity and intention. But not every lingering connection is meant to be rekindled. Often we hold on to people in our minds not because they belong in our lives now, but because we haven't yet accepted that their role was meant for a specific season, not a lifetime. The mind and heart can romanticize the past, especially when we're feeling lost or nostalgic. We might focus on the good times, overlooking the reasons why things fell apart. That's why it's crucial to reflect deeply and honestly, what did the connection offer? What did it cost? Have both people changed for the better, or are you holding on to potential rather than reality? Choosing to grow from a connection and move forward can be one of the hardest but most empowering decisions you make. It means honoring what that person brought into your life, whether joy, pain, lessons, or transformation, and acknowledging that their purpose may have already been fulfilled. It takes strength to say, this shaped me, but it no longer serves me. Growth requires letting go of what's no longer aligned with who you are now. It means choosing peace over confusion, clarity over fantasy, and self-respect over emotional repetition. This kind of growth doesn't erase the connection, it refines it into wisdom. You carry forward what you learned, how you felt, what you discovered about yourself. You may always have love for that person, but loving someone doesn't always mean they belong in your present life. Sometimes love means wishing them well from a distance while you continue your path in a direction that supports your healing, your values, and your dreams. The decision to revisit or release must come from a place of truth, not loneliness or fear. Ask yourself if you're drawn back to the connection because of unresolved emotions or because there's genuine, renewed alignment. Are you seeking comfort in the familiar, or are you genuinely ready to build something new with that person? Is the connection one that helps you grow or one that holds you back in patterns you back in? Ultimately, it comes down to what serves your highest self. Whether you choose to revisit the connection or grow beyond it, make sure it's a conscious, intentional choice, not one driven by impulse or habit. Because both paths, returning and releasing, require courage. One asks you to rebuild with purpose, the other asks you to trust that something better lies ahead. Either way, you're choosing growth, and that in itself is a powerful step forward.